Myself is Praful Manik Puria and I shall be teaching the subject General Science for Class 8. Today in General Science we are going to study the very first lesson in our textbook of General Science, and that is Living World and Classification of Microbes. There are many living beings around us. Some we can see, some we cannot. We cannot see certain organisms because they are very small. So they are called microbes. But these microbes are also all not same. They are of different types. And basically in this chapter we are going to study the different types of microbes under the head classification of microbes. According to the recent census, there are around 87 million of different species. Now, to study them, it becomes so difficult because some are on land and some under the oceans. To make this study simpler, they are grouped, and this grouping is nothing but classification. Since the living organisms are grouped here, we call them biological classification. This classification is also done on different bases, and many scientists have made attempts for this. Robert Whittaker has classified them into 5 groups: Monera, Protista, fungi, plantae and animalia. Now this classification is also on different criteria. First criteria is about the complexity of cell structure. On this basis, organism can either be prokaryotic or eukaryotic. When the cell doesn't have differentiation of different organelles and nucleus, it is called prokaryotic, and when it is opposite, it is called eukaryotic. Classification is also on the basis of complexity. Whether the organism is made up of single cell, then it is unicellular, and if it is made of more than one cell, then it is multicellular. Further base of classification is mode of nutrition. Some are autotrophic, means they make their own food or synthesize their own food within themselves, like the green plants. Now, there are others who do not synthesize and they become heterotrophs, who depend on others for their food need, and some are saprophytic, which carries out absorption from the dead and decaying organisms. The other criteria is the lifestyle, whether they are plants, animals or fungi. That is, plants are producers, animals are consumers, means they do not synthesize their food but depend on others for their food, like the producers or other consumers. And fungi are decomposer, means they are saprophytic, they depend for their food requirement on dead and decaying organisms. And the 5th classification base is the phylogenetic relationship. Phylogenetic relationship means whether it is in transition period or not. If it is in transition period, then it is belonging to this criteria, means from prokaryotic to eukaryotic or unicellular to multicellular, means it has certain characteristics of one and certain of other. What we have seen now is that an organism can either be prokaryotic or eukaryotic. If it is prokaryotic, then it will always be unicellular, and that classification is kingdom 1 and we name it Monera. If at all it is eukaryotic, then it can either be unicellular or multicellular. If it is unicellular, then that kingdom is named Protista. And if it is multicellular, it is further divided in 3 more kingdoms. One is fungi, which we are going to study in this lesson. But the other two, plant and animal, will be dealt with in the coming classes. Like the plant kingdom will be dealt in class 9 and the animal kingdom will be done in class 10. Now we are studying the first kingdom, Monera. If you take a small drop of buttermilk and you mix it with some water and observe it under microscope, you will find some rod-like structures. They are nothing but bacteria, and the name of it is lactobacilli. So all the types of bacteria are included in this group of Monera, and also the blue-green algae. This blue-green algae is also included in the group Monera. Now, Monera has certain characteristics, like it is unicellular, it can either be autotrophic or heterotrophic, and they are all prokaryotic, means they do not have distinction of nucleus or cell organelles. The second group is Protista. For this, if you take a slide where you have a drop of water collected from pond, you will see that some small organisms are moving, and these organisms are belonging to the group Protista. They are nothing but the amoeba. Now, here, these organisms belonging to Protista have certain characteristics, like they are single-celled organism, means they are unicellular. They have pseudopodia like in amoeba, or hair-like cilia in euglena, and these are their organelles which help them to move. These organisms can be autotrophs and make their own food like euglena, or heterotrophs like amoeba, which depends on other organisms for their food. The next group which we are studying here is fungi. If you keep a piece of bread as it is for 2 to 3 days, slowly you will find a growth of thread-like structure on it, and this, if you observe under the microscope, it is nothing but thread-like structure of fungus. The appearance of fungus is this. Now, there are certain characteristics of fungus, like they are non-green, eukaryotic organism. Since they are non-green, they are heterotrophic. Most of them are saprotrophs, means they depend on dead and decaying organism for their food requirement. Their cell wall is made up of tough and complex sugar, which is called chitin. And some fungus are thread-like structure and have many nucleus in them. Baker's yeast is an example which is very common and used in every household, and penicillin is an example of fungus which is used in medicine. After classifying the living organisms, now let us see what are microbes. If we see all the living organisms, though microorganisms are very small in size, they are largest in number. Now let us classify the microorganisms. Microorganisms can be prokaryotic and eukaryotic. All the bacteria are prokaryotes. But when we are talking about the protista, fungus and algae, they are all eukaryotes. Now, these microorganisms are very small. And so they are measured in micrometer and still smaller nanometer. The very first one which we are going to see is bacteria. Now bacteria are small organisms and their size is between 1 micrometer to 10 micrometer. They are of different shapes. They are all unicellular and prokaryotic. Now these bacteria always reproduce by simple binary fission, means they divide in two, and if the condition is favorable, they can double their number in 20 minutes, means in 20 minutes 100 bacteria can become 200. Next is protozoa. Size of protozoa is approximately 200 micrometer. Now these protozoas are found in soil as well as in water. These protozoa are mostly pathogenic, means they cause diseases. Now these protozoa are unicellular eukaryotic cells, and they have certain structures which are used for locomotion, as we can see these hair-like structures in paramecium. These organisms reproduce by simple cell division. If we see the examples, amoeba and paramecium, they live in dirty water. These are all pathogens as we have seen. So Plasmodium vivax causes malaria, and Entamoeba histolytica causes amoebiasis. Euglena is autotrophic, means it produces its own food. After that, let us see fungi. This microorganism have size between 10 micrometer to 100 micrometer, and these organisms are usually found on dead and decaying organic matter, means the waste on the dead bodies of plants and animals. They are eukaryotic organisms and are unicellular, but they can be seen by our naked eyes. Since they depend on the decaying matter, they are saprophytic in nature. They reproduce both by sexual and asexual method. If they reproduce asexually, then they reproduce either by cell division or by budding. Baker's yeast and the mushroom which we eat and see around in rainy season are different types of fungi. The other microorganism which we are going to study now is algae. The size of algae is also between 10 micrometers to 100 micrometers. These algae are aquatic in nature, means they are found in water. They are eukaryotic, unicellular and autotrophic. They synthesize their own food. Photosynthesis is carried out with help of chloroplast present in their cell. Chlorella is an example of algae. Chlorella is an example of algae. Some of algae are unicellular and most of them are multicellular, and so they are mostly visible with our naked eyes. Finally, now we shall study viruses. They are very small in size, so they are measured in nanometers, and size of virus is between 10 nanometers to 100 nanometers. Usually viruses are not considered as living organisms. They are considered on the edge of living and non-living things. But still, they are studied under microbiology. They are very small, as we have seen. They are very small and measured in nanometers. Being so small, they cannot be seen in simple microscope or compound microscope. So, they are observed under electron microscope. They are found in the form of independent particles, and this virus is a long module of DNA or RNA which is covered by protein coat. These viruses survive only in living plant or animals, and they produce their own proteins with the help of the cell in which they are growing, and finally they create number of replicas like them and they multiply. Finally, after multiplication, they destroy the host cell and then become free. These free viruses will again infect the new cells and grow and develop more such viruses in that new cell. This virus is causes many diseases in plants and animals, like the tomato wilt virus causes the wilting of tomato, whereby the tomato gets blackened in color and decay. And we have viral flu or viral fever or coronavirus. These are the viruses which are causing diseases in animals. So with these children, we have studied the classification of living organisms as well as classification of microorganisms. Now, to understand this lesson in a better way, do have a reading of the lesson so that you will understand it very well.